Thanks, Sheila. My first job was actually in higher education. So I was working at a university, but I was working on the university paint crew. So my summer of my junior year of high school, I spent at the University of Arkansas refurbishing the campus residence halls, which even back then were called dormitories. And so that was my first job, was painting those residence halls and getting them ready for the new students. And so the following year, I guess I escalated and progressed into housekeeping at the university, and never, I would say, for the next 15 years, went on to work at universities in other capacities, but that's where I started.
Amazing. You were destined for higher ed.
I agree.
Ken, what was your first job?
So I kind of always had been hustling, and I originally started selling magazines door to door at the age of 8 because I love to buy things. So I had to fund that. But if you had to talk about my real first W-2 job, that was at Dairy Queen when I was 16. And actually I was 15 at that time, and kind of grew from there. Ended up working in banking, working in higher ed, working in tech, and also in mortgage. So that's kind of how I progressed, and all while going to school. So
fantastic. Wow, Dairy Queen. I'm sure you made a lot of friends in high school.
Oh yeah, you have to do a little loop. You got to get it right. You got to practice.
That's awesome. Shainil, what was your first job?
So for me, it was not until I turned 22 that I got my first job. So I was too far behind everyone else. It was 2 jobs that I started at ASU. Sun Devil Civility was one, and the other was the communications officer. So I love to do photography and videography. So that's how I got that job. So I used to film interviews, film the art fest and all. And it was quite hot during that time. It was 105 degrees. So something of Arizona I learned quite early when I came here, that it's going to be really hot. So that was my first job.
That's awesome. I've seen some of your work. It's pretty impressive.
Thanks.
Awesome. So today we are joined by ASU international students and alumni from all over the world. Can you please share with us a brief description of your own journey in international school and or workspace? Start off with Ken.
So actually, where I first started working with international, in the international space was at Nextiva. We actually had offices in Mexico and also in the Ukraine. And so interestingly, our extended HR team was in the Ukraine. So interfacing with them and kind of coming up with recruitment strategies and seeing the differences between what people are looking for in other countries and what we're doing, and also even communication wise was very interesting. But that has been the extent of what I was doing there.
Nice.
And then I guess also working with students that might have H1s or whatnot, and going through that process. That's a very interesting process also.
Awesome. Eager to learn more a little bit about that, but thank you. Janelle, what advice would you share as far as your background?
Absolutely, Sheila. So I think my curiosity about the larger global, world began because my dad was in the United States Air Force. And so I did all of my early education abroad, even if it was on a military base, but being exposed to cultures in Okinawa, Japan, South Korea. And so I think that was the impetus. And then some other, things that kind of went through my journey, if you will, is that I had a desire to be a U.S. diplomat or ambassador, but this was a secret ambition and I never really told anybody about it. And so I still had that interest to the point where I was able to have the opportunity to live and work in New Zealand. One of my partner had a Rotary ambassadorial scholarship. And so we had the opportunity to travel the country and give presentations about our home state in Arkansas, as well as the United States. And so that just kind of furthered my interest. And at some point I did take and pass the Foreign Service Officer exam, but never fully progressed through that cycle. But I still had that global mindset and that interest to be of service. And so when I had the opportunity at ASU, they had a job position for international student professional development, I believe in 2016. I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to put myself forward, even though I was afraid maybe I wasn't qualified enough. I still put my materials forward, got the position, and have, you know, seen myself, at least in that role, as ASU's ambassador or diplomat. And so just sharing with, you know, the students and alums on the call today that, you know, maybe what you want in your career can show up in a different way than you may have originally intended. And still to say, I think I can try until I'm 59 and a half to be a diplomat. So I've got a few years left. But that's a little bit about my, you know, that global exposure, global journey there, Sheila.
Awesome. Thanks, Janelle. Shainil, tell us a little bit about your journey, being an international student yourself.
Yeah, so for me, I was the least interested person to even go abroad. I decided very late in my career that I had to do something. It was a wake-up call, and it was more like I saw a lot of my friends who were traveling to different countries. It was America, Australia, Canada, London. So for me, it was more looking at other people. So I am that person who walk in how the sheeps would walk together. But once I came here at ASU, I had a clarity looking at the university infrastructure, especially in research, which was really something I was interested in. Main reason for me to do my master's. Coming here, I saw so many international students here. One of the largest universities to have so many international students. And from my first day, we had, and when I came here, I know my flight was like about 36, 40 hours. And I landed to Phoenix Airport, no mobile phone, nothing working. And you have to book the cab. How would you go? So I saw Indian Association people who were there at the airport, and they helped me get all that logistics. So from that day, I thought that when any international student would come, they would like such help in the starting, because maybe they don't have family members here. So I was one of them who didn't had somebody to pick up. So after that, I just went on, got lucky that I got Sun Devil Civility job, met one of my mentors, she's here as well, Renee. She helped me with my language. I was not a fluent English speaker to say, and I got a lot of help through ASU. I met her through the ASU Mentor Network. So also just stating that it really helped me to meet so many different students and mentors that way. And then, yeah, just try to be involved on campus with anything. And ASU has so many events. If you want to do something, you can just do all the events and you'll be fine now.
Yeah, kudos to you for taking advantage of all the opportunities, and also not only being a student who came and didn't know anybody and had the Indian Student Association there to greet you, you turning back and giving that back to others as well. So kudos to you for doing that. That's awesome. Great. And so what advice do you have for students or alumni looking to break into your particular field of expertise? I'll turn it over to Janelle.
So where I'm working now is as a corporate recruiter. And so that was another professional goal I had, was to use the skill set that I cultivated in higher education, working in offices of admission, career services offices, and transition that into a career in human resources. So if anybody is looking for something similar to that, or even your own thing, whatever it is, my piece of advice, I think, is to leverage whatever transferable skills you have to get into that career that you're seeking. So for me, again, things such as relationship management, the ability, to plan and schedule events, conduct interviews. In some sense, working with students, coaching them is very similar to talent management. And so just thinking about, in your particular situation, what are the things that you have to bring as a skill set, and how can you tell your story in such a way that it will make it easy for the recruiter, the hiring manager, to understand that maybe you've not had that position prior, that you're bringing a set of skills that is going to allow you to perform at a high level in whatever that functional role is. So as somebody who would be called a quote unquote career changer, that's some guidance I could share with everyone on the call today.
Awesome, great advice, thank you. And Shainil, I know that you said that's 1 month in on your job right now, but I'd be curious to see, like, what advice would you be able to give students as they're transitioning from student to the world of work?
Yeah, sure. So I was never, like Janell mentioned a very good point, that you should be able to tell your story in front of the manager. I didn't know how to speak to managers when I went to my career fair for the first time. And I, in fact, didn't even knew what to do, because I used to go to them and it was a on-campus career fair. It was not even like a proper career fair. And I visited some of the booths and they used to tell me, this is our, I used to hand out my resume to them and they would give me another paper and tell that you go online and apply. So, and it happened multiple times. So, and I got a little frustrated. So I went to a lady, and she's right here, Janell. And I went to her and I told her that, hey, what is this? I came all the way here and they're just telling me to go online and apply. What am I doing here then? And she, in fact, just calmed me down and she told me, it's fine. It's not like that. The career fairs are different. Like, you go there to talk to them. You go there to know the company. You go there to express yourself. And she gave me one of the tip, which I have always kept with myself, that whenever you meet any of your employer, take their business card and write on the back about what you talked. So when you email them back, you can use the same things, because you might meet 10 to 15 employers. So for me, yeah, I learned through that. I was not a professional. I just went to different career fairs, career events, and that has helped me a lot.
Great advice. Yeah, there's a ton of career fairs happening. And many students may be a little nervous right now because it's like, okay, I don't have that chance to have that face-to-face, opportunity during the pandemic right now. But fortunately, we do have virtual career fairs lined up, coming up in the summer and the fall. So, it's just a little transition, but then that's where Brianna and her team have been able to, just coach you through that process. Like, networking is critical. Like, that's such great advice, and it still can happen on a virtual setting. Ken, what are some pieces of your advice?
I would say definitely figure out ways to get exposure to the role that you're looking for. So for me, I worked through a lot of my school program, and even before I got to ASU, I knew that I wanted to be in HR, and I thought I wanted to be in employee relations. But in working with my career, I obviously took time to chat with the folks that were in the positions that I thought that I wanted to be in. And you learn quite a bit from that. And so learning with that, you're able to kind of make sure that you put yourself in positions that have transferable skills, and then also know how to talk and articulate about that when it is time for you to apply for that job or talk to a hiring manager. So I highly recommend, taking that time. So for me, one of the things I did when I was actually working at University of Phoenix was took the time to shadow in the talent acquisition group, and then also took time to shadow with the HR business partners. And I found out quickly that I didn't really want to do the employee relations stuff, but I loved the talent acquisition portion of things. And then I just focused from there on what I wanted to get after, and I was able to articulate it because I had seen it and had exposure to what was actually happening in the role. So if you take anything from that, get the exposure. You might not get the job that you're looking for specifically right away, but make sure those jobs have those transferable skills, and then learn enough about it that you can speak about it when you get the chance, when you get the opportunity.
Excellent advice. Thank you. Yeah, having that hands-on experience is so critical, and just being able to shadow, it just takes it to another level. Thank you. So what are some rewarding and challenging aspects of working internationally, or perhaps working with international colleagues domestically? I'll turn it over to, let's see, Ken, we're going to go back to you.
Okay. So I think one of the, glaring ones for me is like time zones. So for our team that was working internationally, they were getting off work when we were starting. And so to interface with that group and make sure that we're keeping everybody included, that was a little bit of a challenge. But we did make the effort to try to either come in a little bit earlier so that we'd be not at the very tail end of their day, or they would stay a little bit later so that we could mesh that. And obviously you have other forms of technology to communicate, but obviously if someone's across the world, you do want to see them face to face, and we were using Zoom to have conversations with them and to make sure that everybody was in line. So I would say that's one thing. I think also cultural differences in communication. Some people would get a message from somebody from a different country or whatnot, and just the way the communication came through, it might have felt abrasive or felt different. And so people just need to take a step back and realize that people do communicate a little bit differently. So for example, we would have emails come that were very, very direct, and the person was just saying, they just need to get something done. It has no personal piece to it, but some people could get offended here in the US because they want to talk a little bit more about something or whatnot. So we had that. And then I think one of the cool things is I enjoy learning about other cultures and how people do things differently. And so just getting the exposure to other people, I think, is one of the great things to work with somebody internationally, because it's interesting and it's fun to tell stories and talk about how things are different, and just, for lack of better terms, get more cultured in working with people that are working from another part of the world or coming here and working with us. I'm a first generation American, so obviously I have experience with that happening. So
Fantastic. Yeah, those pesky time zones are no joke, but they're worth it. Like you said, you make you get accustomed to it and you adapt, No, great advice. Great perspective there. Janelle.
Sheila, I'd actually even like to build off of what Ken was saying a little bit as it related to a culture, maybe within an organization, whether that's domestically or internationally, or how we might be corresponding. But just, 2 years ago, I went into a new company. And so even when you're taking your first job, no matter where that is, being aware of those cues and communication, right? And as Ken was saying, maybe it's not to take it personal, but this is just the way that we communicate in this organization, and to be mindful of those cues so that you can start to communicate in a similar way. And I'll give a very small example, but when I went on board at Cognizant, I was noticing that many people in their salutations of their emails, so hi, so-and-so, and they would do a hyphen instead of a comma. So this is a small thing to notice, but to be, similarly minded and addressing my colleagues, I adopted that slight distinction. So when you said that, Ken, it just made me think of how that can play out in other ways too when you're going into an organization. But Sheila, you'll have to get me back on track and ask the original question.
Sure. Yeah. So what are some of the rewarding and challenging aspects of working internationally, or perhaps working with international colleagues domestically?
Right. And this is where Ken hit it on the head too. So time zones, as we've all said, but wherever there's an obstacle, you see an opportunity, right? And so the opportunity here being, as I choose to see it, I can build my day in a different way. So maybe this schedule allows me to do, let's say, an early morning run, and then I can get on my calls. And so just having that creativity and incorporating it and not seeing it perhaps as, like a drudgery, I think is a way to overcome that. And then I also just see it as what a great opportunity to have this experience of connection where we previously didn't have that, right? And so I just see that as an opportunity for engagement where might not even, let's say, 20 years ago have existed in this way. So I think that helps me.
Awesome. No, that's great perspective. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Janelle, what are your thoughts?
Well, I am myself international, so I met a lot of domestic people here. I did 2 internships before my job. So one was a volunteer internship. It was work from home. So I didn't get a lot to interact and see their faces and know how they communicate. It was more formal. But my second internship, which was in Gilbert itself, I was the only international student who was there. Rest of them were from here itself. So it got very interesting when we had a proposal for one of the optics things, some science physics things, and it came to me, and they asked me whether it's okay or not, and I answered pass. So in my culture, if I say pass, that means okay, we are good, let's go ahead. But here it would mean that you are rejecting that. So I didn't knew that until I gave that reply. And after a few days, my manager came to me. He's like, what happened? Where is that work still? And I'm like, no, I said like, it's good to go. He's like, no, it's still there. So one of like, there are a few nuances I would say when you work in a different culture. Also, one of the things which Kimberly Lewis, she was one of my mentors. She works at SRP right now. And she told me this in my first semester. I asked her, like, how do you get the work done? Like, you might have some colleagues who are not very willing to work together. They might have their own opinions. And they might also not do their work properly sometimes. So she would just tell me that you throw the ball in their court. So you would ask them questions. If they have not done something, you won't point them out like you have done this wrong. They would just ask questions like, hey, I just saw this in the email and it looks like everything is good, but this is something which is missing. So can you figure that out for me? So just this way of saying and communicating the same thing, I learned through that. So I think communication is the key. Like you have to communicate properly. In a different culture, you might not know many things. Same things might have different meanings. Always good to ask questions. Like never be afraid. One thing which I saw with people here, that they are very willing to answer if you ask them questions. And that's why they mention in their emails, please let me know if you have any questions. So that's the first shoot for you. Go and ask questions. So yeah, that would be my take on that.
That's a great take. Thanks for that. That's great advice all around. Definitely. Thank you. So with everything going on in the world right now, do you have any insights or projections on the impact this pandemic will have for international employers, workers, and students in your field? I'll turn it over to Janelle to kick us off on that.
Yeah, so I feel actually very lucky to share that Cognizant has its own think tank or thought leadership called our Center for the Future of Work. And so they have recently been producing a lot of white papers and video content about the post-COVID-19 workplace. And so I would encourage everyone on the call today to go and check out those materials. And, things such as what we're calling a remote-topia, this new work from home, and how is this impacting telemedicine and user adoption of new technologies. And so they've done a lot of research, and so I would really encourage everyone to go and check that out.
Great resource.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ken, what do you see in the forefront as far as how things have changed, especially in the healthcare field?
Absolutely. So on the telehealth portion of things, a lot of people are scrambling to get that done. I think a lot of people have figured it out at this point. Prodigy Healthcare had been doing it about 2 years ago. So it was kind of just business as usual. But I think, at least on the employment side of things, there's already a shift, right? Before I had managers where they're like, I can't just do a Zoom call and hire someone, right? Where now you kind of have to, right? Or, at least that's the first interview, or maybe half of that's done. So I've noticed a speed in getting interviews done, right? Because now nobody has to coordinate their schedule, right? They're already at home more than likely. And they move over to that. And so I think you're going to see that. And then also there's a shift on where talent can be found. Actually, a company I was talking to the other day, they were looking at, well, we're all decentralized now. Now we can go get talent in another city, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really affect anything. So I think across the board, I think internationally, we'll start to see a shift on where the work can be done and who can be employed for that work. So
critical insights. Yeah, it's true. We are, it's amazing how big the world is, but we are still small. And thank God for technology that we are able to, tap into that. So that's a great perspective. And it removes the limitations for both the worker and the employer. Like no longer is it just bound by geography.
Absolutely.
Great perspective. Shainil, what are your thoughts?
I think so. I work in the semiconductor industry, and we still have job openings. We just filled our last vacancy in my company, but the hiring is coming. It's coming at a slow pace because about, I would say, 25 to 30% occupancy is allowed in the fab itself. So fabrication is where they would make the semiconductor chips and all. So they are not allowing more than 30% to enter there. So could be, it may take some time, I would say, but I think it's still going strong. I also saw on LinkedIn about the jobs, and it does tell me if I look for jobs, there is a blue circle which would tell you actively hiring or actively looking for people. So that's one of my tips, that if you go and search for that job, you can also see that whether that company is actively looking for candidates right now or not. Sometimes they might also be looking to fill up really quickly. Like we had 3 vacancies and we filled it up in 1 month. So it could be really quick. Like the entire process got done in 1 month, from having interviews to giving the offer letter. So that's one tip. Sorry, I forgot your question.
No, yeah, you're right. It's just talking about like, because of the status of the world, like, looking at the impact this pandemic will have for international employers. And I think you mentioned, a lot.
Yeah, and it's difficult, honestly. And I myself had to do some hundreds of applications, and I'm not here to scare you that you have to do that. It's fine if you do 5 also. But I had to do a lot because of my field and what I was looking for. I did got some interviews. I gave the interviews, and it was like in the last stage, and then the offer got revoked, the position got cancelled. So students might face that right now when they're applying that, and it's difficult. I have a lot of sympathy for all the students right now, because I see my friends who are applying, and it's difficult because as an international student, you cannot work outside. You need to have a STEM job. So you cannot like just have any type of job. So it's tough times, but I think it's gonna pace up really, really soon. Also, one thing is on LinkedIn, we have a lot of our alumni which are there, LinkedIn, Twitter, ASU network. So I think going there and asking them if you find that company or field interesting, just go and message them like, hey, I'm from Arizona State University. I graduated with this, and I'm looking for this opportunity. Can you let me know if you guys are hiring? And you would be shocked, like 8 out of 10 times ASU alum would reply. That's what I see. They would definitely try to help you. So don't be shy. Go there and ask the company, employer from ASU itself, if they're hiring on that.
Yeah, definitely. Use the network, right? It's such a strong network.
And Sheila, could I also add to that? One thing that came to mind is for everyone to be open-minded in the sense of this is a time of great change. And so we're seeing maybe new opportunities arise. So now is a time to, I guess, keep your eye on this changing landscape. And so I'm thinking of things such as maybe some different work schemes that different countries are proposing. So like, I think I saw something for Barbados, just as examples of this is a very dynamic time. And so to scan the environment, to see what new opportunities, again, new policies that are coming into place that can be in your favor.
Definitely. Do you want to elaborate on the Barbados opportunity? Because I think I saw it too.
Oh, no, I didn't do anything deeper than that, but it's on my list. So
what I understand, they're offering.
I'm always looking. Yeah, where's the next place to go? So
yeah, from what I understand, I think they're offering $10,000 to anybody who comes to decide to work from there, since everybody's working remote anyways.
Right.
So they're saying, hey, come to Barbados and do it. So good insight.
There's also a lot of requirement for architects these days because everybody's working from home. So there's also one opportunity rising there.
Good point. Awesome. So what is one piece of career and professional development advice you would like to give our international students and alumni? I'll start off with you, Shainil. I know you just started giving us some advice already, so if you want to elaborate on that.
One piece of advice. Well, I have a lot of advice. I think what everybody is saying here, like to network, to reach to employers, to have your homework done, I would say. If an opportunity comes, you should be ready for that. You should have your resume, cover letter. You should have all that ready in place before you go there. There are a lot of workshops, and I attended one which I personally really liked, which I had a lot many, but that specifically was about etiquettes and how you should go navigate the career fair. They taught how to do a handshake, how you should do a handshake, what type of food you should eat before you go to the career fair. And it's the small things, the top 10 core competencies, and none of them were technical. It was all different communications, leadership, and all. So attend those workshops, and they are free of cost, that Career Services organizes. And you just go on handshake. That's how I used to know everything. Like people used to ask me, how do you know about it? It's handshake. Just go there on the events. You would find a lot of help there. There are a lot of opportunities by student governments as well. They would provide you funding depending on what you want as well. So those are the people who you have elected. So they are the ones who would help you if you need them for any matter. Good way to network as well. Like I was a part of with GPSA, so I used to meet many students who were alumni through their panel, just like this. And then the mentor network, actually, I keep mentioning that because it has helped me a lot. And I met this guy, Jim Godfrey, through there. And he told me to come to his church where he had his professional network meet. Very interesting setup. And we went there, and he told me that there is another event which is happening January 2019. And it's about a golf. And you should go there and you should meet a lot of people there. They're all industry professionals who work here. I'm like, I don't even know how to play golf. Like, I just know cricket. Like, that's the best thing I know. He's like, no, you go there, you go and talk with them. You would find something. I was looking for an internship. And so I went there, and everybody was playing golf. They had their golf carts and they were going around. I was the one walking on the golf which was also not allowed. I didn't knew that. Somehow I found one or two people who said like, hey man, I see you like since a while. What's up? Like, are you here for the event? I'm like, yeah, I want to meet the president. I'm like, oh, you want to meet him? Okay. Do you know him? I'm like, no. Like, okay, you wait in the lobby, and we are going to finish the game in 4 hours, and you can meet him after that. We have lunch. So I was waiting there after 4 hours. Everybody started to check in inside. And they were asking for some ID so that they could allow people. And I went there. I didn't have anything. So he's like, can I have your ID? And I was like, ID as in their ID, not my actual ID. So I was like, no, I actually don't have anything. He's like, then you're not allowed to go inside. I'm like, but the president invited me. You can ask him, Steve, he's inside. They're like, oh, he invited you. I'm like, yeah. Like, sorry. And then he took me inside. And he's like, I'm like, where is he? Like, he's on the stage right there. And I saw 3 people there. Now, I have not seen that person ever in my life. And I'm there, and that guy is looking at me that once I go and talk to that person, he would leave. So I went close and I said, Steve, hi. And one of the guy turned. So that's how I found out that he was Steve. And then we met and we talked about that. So I think you have to take some risk as an international student. So that is one of my piece of advice. Like, go and explore. There are a lot of professional events which go on. You might not know anyone, but that could be a good starting point for you, because a student is an ID, I think. As a student, you have that ID, which you can go and show it to anyone and they would help you. You can get about 80 to 90% discounts in any conferences or any events of the professional networks or associations. So take that opportunity. I found it very late in my career that I could use all that, but that's one advice which again I would tell, that grab that opportunity since as long as you're a student. So
I love the boldness. You're amazing. That's how you do it, folks. Ken, I'll turn it over to you. What piece of advice would you have in career and professional development as international students are navigating the world of work?
Absolutely. I think there's going to be a common theme here with network. And one of the things I always say is network before you need to use that person or get something from them, right? Try to get people to just get to know you and get to know them and what they're doing. And also don't be afraid to ask for help, even if it is the first contact that you have with the person. A story about that, when I was working in mortgage as a recruiting leader there, I had a gentleman reach out to me and he just said, "Hey, I see that you have good history in talent acquisition. I just want to know how you got there and what you did." Little did he know that I would have took his resume, I built his resume for him to show him how he could adapt it. And then I sent it to 3 people that I knew and he got a position within 2 weeks. I don't know how many people he reached out to before he reached out to me, but you got to think about it that way. It's not going to be the people that you reach out to that don't respond to you or don't say anything. And realize most people want to help, but sometimes they don't have the time. It's the one person that does take the time to give you something and move you forward. And so that person specifically ended up growing in his career, and he actually owns his own agency now that's doing really well. And who knows, somebody else might have helped him, but he might have reached out to 1,000 people before he reached out to me. And I was the first person that responded. So you got to think about it in that aspect of it's that one person that's going to help you. So once again, network. And even for me, I would tell you about 87% of the positions that I've had have been through some form of network, right? Whether I knew somebody directly or somebody knew somebody and passed me over. So just know that your network is extremely important. Focus on building that and doing it early before you need it.
Fantastic advice, definitely. And what a way to pay it forward, right? And so being able to help him on his journey. Great job, Ken. Janelle, I know you've got a ton of experience in this area, so share with us.
For sure. Thanks, Sheila. And so I think the things, thing that we've heard that's been described, right, from networking and leveraging maybe student orgs and all these resources that are available, I think what students need to do, but also us as growing professionals, is to simultaneously make sure that we're checking in with ourselves and what are our goals, and making sure that we really are, spending some time getting to know ourselves while also doing all of these tasks that lead us to the outcome of the job that we want. And so I say that kind of taking an inventory of, what are your interests, and, not being judgmental of those as you evaluate what it is that is your area of interest. And so I think that process of discovery that comes through early career, but also, as we advance in our professional lives, I think is critically important to make sure we have that component almost as a foundation as we're simultaneously, sending out 1,000 applications, Shainil, right? Because what's going to sustain you through all of that effort, because it is effort to get the position that you're looking for. And so I think by cultivating some sort of, internal, and you hear people talk about the why for doing what you do, but I do think that helps direct your career and help you make the right choices as you're navigating that. So that's the piece I would like to add and encourage everyone to consider while they're also ticking off all of those boxes. And I think the benefit that you see from that is during your interview process that you come off as someone who's very sincere and genuine. You've done your work, you know what it is that you're interested in, what you can bring to the corporation or the nonprofit or wherever it is that you're going to do your work. And so I think that that type of investment in yourself allows for you to show up authentically. And I think that always resonates well during an interview or the job seeking process.
Fantastic. Yeah, great perspective there. Thanks, Janelle. And so we've got some really great questions in the chat, so excited to get to them soon. So we're going to go to our final question for the panel, formalized question, is how do you stay connected to ASU? What are some of the platforms you use for professional development, such as networking or job searching? I'll start it off with Ken.
All right. Are those two separate things?
They could be two separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with ASU, I do try to help out. A few of the things we've done is kind of the interview development skills and going in and doing the mock interviews and helping students get up to speed on what they need to do when they get out into the workplace. I think for me personally on the personal development side, I think it's important to always be learning. And so one of the things that I do, and I think everybody can do, and it's really easy, is YouTube. There's a lot of stuff that you can actually learn on there if you follow the right people. Ed Milet and Jim Quick are some of the ones that are interesting to me. Ed Milet talks a lot about positive things and gets a lot of people that have done well in their careers or are growing. And so you can listen to them. It's pretty easy. And then Jim Quick talks about how you can learn faster and stuff like that. The other thing that I do is I had a commute. I don't have a commute anymore like I used to. But if you have a commute or you're taking time to go somewhere, Audible's great to get some books and just listen to books. And so typically, I mean, I was in the car 2 hours a day, if you will, and so you make your car a classroom, right? And so you continue that learning. And then on LinkedIn, I'm always trying to make sure I'm connecting with people. You'll send messages to people. If somebody reaches out to you and they just want to know more, have a conversation with them, because you never know how you can help them out or how they may be able to help you out. So I do those various things.
That's awesome. Great tips there. I'm also a fan of Audible. Because of the pandemic, started running again, and just, that was my playlist, just listen to a book, right? Great advice. Shainil, what are your advice, your pieces of advice as far as how do you stay connected to ASU, but then also what are some platforms you use for professional development? Oh wait, I think you're on mute.
My bad, sorry.
No problem.
Video things. So I do try to stay connected with Sun Devils. I think it's not possible, but going for a football match, like you might meet a lot of people there who you could network that way. But one for sure thing is the mentor network. And it's super easy for anyone to understand how you can refine that for everyone, which industry you're looking for. So you can just select that and you can talk to people who are already willing to help. So I think that's a great place if you just want to get started or you need mentorship. It's not always that person will give you a job, but he can at least tailor you with something with your resume, sharpen your skills with how you do your interviews, mock interviews. There is this rapid resume review, which I used to take by the career services. I think it was in the mill side, I don't know which building it was. It was, so they had this on the 4th floor there, and they would have industrial professionals who would come and review the resume. And I think that was a very interesting thing if you want to just show your resume and get some advice, but also to network to that person itself. So ample of clubs also, they are there. I know few of my organizations where I was a part with, eventually I found out that they were also some talent acquisition person, or they were the senior manager there. You just go to have fun, and eventually you would meet some really good leads. So I've had people who have told me that they went even to a bar in Mill and have ended up getting an interview there. So it can happen anywhere. You just got to be yourself then. You don't have to always pretend someone. be yourself, like what you are, project that. And I think that will help you a lot. So that's the way to stay connected with Sun Devils.
Fantastic. And as far as professional development, what do you do to stay up on your professional development?
I still use Handshake to look into any updates, any, I would say, job openings or something which I would be interested in. So Handshake is a pretty good tool, which I would recommend. It's for lifetime since you become an alumni. Also, the ASU Alumni Association is #1 right now. It's published in Phoenix Business Journal. So I think that just says it all. Like, we are the best alumni association. So best networking which you can do is through them.
Great advice. Thanks for the plug there for the association. Janelle, what are ways that you stay connected to ASU, and what are some professional development tools that you use for yourself?
Yes, so to stay connected with the ASU community, I'm receiving, as you can imagine, a lot of newsletters and just things that might be coming out from the Alumni Association. Also, you'll find some of the different schools or colleges within ASU will also send out communications. So just making sure I'm staying on those for ones that are of interest. And then, as you know, we heard Ken say earlier about LinkedIn as it relates to the networking piece. I have a saying that if it's not on LinkedIn, it didn't happen. So I am and I feel my time at ASU in the last position I had there was, you know, I was really putting out a lot of content because there was a lot to share as it related to the growth of the international student professional development arm at ASU. And so just maintaining that mindset of if I'm not sharing this story, then people aren't hearing it, right? And so how is that reflective of, you know, my brand personally, what I'm projecting to my professional community, so much so to the point where I could only maintain one social media platform. I stopped posting as much on Facebook, and people were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, yes, I've just shifted all my efforts to LinkedIn. So maybe you're better with your delegation of, you know, managing your, I guess, social media presence. But I think that's critically important, especially now that we're in this environment where we're having to connect more virtually. So having a real think on how is my digital representation being perceived, and is it accurate reflection of who I am? And if not, how can I make it more so? And so thinking in terms of that, I heard some great, you know, Audible suggestions. I wanted to share a recent book I've listened to, which is called The Obstacle is the Way. And so it's just a way of reframing the way we see things, in the sense of, if there is this obstacle, well, maybe instead of, you know, bemoaning it, how can I embrace it and use it to my advantage? And so I encourage everyone to check that out. And then just in terms of other ways of staying connected, there's Facebook groups for higher education. So I've been able to stay connected through certain forums to hear what's going on at universities as they're making their decisions on how to operate this fall, because that's going to inform my campus recruitment efforts, right? And so just being mindful that, you know, again, keeping your eye on the landscape so that you're informed and following thought leaders so that you have that data.
Great suggestions, and very great perspectives there. Thank you, Janelle. Thank you to all our panelists for just amazing interaction and just sharing your life with us. And so we appreciate that. And we know that the students and alumni are greatly benefiting from your expertise. So thank you. So now, wow, we're right at 1 o'clock. So with 30 minutes left, we've got some questions here from some of the participants. Let's see here. Shainil, you were involved in several clubs and organizations during your time at ASU. Do you have any tips on balancing these activities with mandatory coursework? And what was the most number of clubs you were ever involved with at one time?
I don't even remember that. Oh my God, that's a good question. When I came here, ASU now, you know that they send a newsletter every morning, and there was one of the research which showed the students who are involved more other than studies, they are more productive. That's what it showed. So I kind of got inspired with that. I was taking 9 credits to maintain my visa status. So other than that, you might find some time on the weekends, I would say, like Friday evening, most of the clubs would have their events. You can just go and hang out. They have free food if you're a fan of food. They have lots of different goodies, ASU thing. I have a lot of ASU's goodies that I have through that. But I think it's up to you how much you can do it. You don't have to be 50-50. You can work 80% and have like 10-20% of the time in spending your time with that, because it's important for your mental health as well. I think you just keep studying, doing work, but you need to take some breaks. So 20 hours of work, after that you can just have a little bit of fun, I would say.
Great suggestion. Janelle and Ken, do you have any insight to how do you balance work-life balance with everything?
I think it just needs to be a conscious effort. You need to know, here's how much I'm going to work and here's what I'm going to play. And I mean, through school for me, that's what I did. I mean, I would say during this period of time, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Well, not down to the T, but I'm going to be doing schoolwork and I'm going to be doing any extracurricular work at that point in time. And then I would if I'm going to play video games or if I'm going to go out and hang out with friends, here's the time that I do that, and I stuck to it. So there was many times friends would be like, hey, let's go do this. I'm like, in order for me to be able to hang out and have peace of mind, I need to make sure I spend the time to get this done. And so just kind of compartmentalizing everything and just being focused and knowing what you're doing is going to help get you there without getting too stressed or burnt out, and then you go off the other side. So
totally. And I find that you could enjoy your time off because you planned it. So it's not like you don't feel guilty during it, right? Yeah, awesome.
Exactly.
Janelle, what are your thoughts?
No, I think I echo that sentiment that Ken just shared. And for me, I think looking back at like the university years, right, just having some discipline to reach the end goal, knowing that my sacrifices in the now are going to lead to rewards in the future. And so for me, that really became apparent during my graduate studies because I was working full time and taking a full graduate student course load. And so just knowing that you can sacrifice in the moment for lifetime of reward has been something I've evidenced. And so I would encourage too that, to embrace that type of mindset that you can get through anything, even things that take years, such as getting degrees. Again, and finding the joy in it and then looking forward to the benefits that you'll receive after you've put in that effort.
Yeah, great.
And if I can add one thing to that. A lot of times what I found too is the busier I was, the more time I had to do more stuff. As after I got done with my master's and after that happened and I started finding myself free time, I found I was doing less. So it's very interesting and it's a weird way to balance things, but you'll find that if you're busy, you figure out how to get everything fit in. So that's the other piece I'll add.
Totally.
And Sheila, I'll add too, because when I was referencing the graduate school, that was for the master's in education. When I was doing the MBA studies, I had a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so you find ways to multitask. So I read Harvard Business Review articles to the 2- and 3-year-old because I had to read the assignments. So I found a way that would be like their bedtime story because you just find ways to get things done.
And that's why Brighton and Owen are so bright.
Maybe it's working. We'll see. This whole pandemic thing's thrown everything off, so.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, guys. Ken, this next question is for you. Do you feel like the healthcare industry is trending towards smaller, more localized providers that are utilizing information sharing?
So I wish I had a really good answer to that, but I just jumped into the healthcare field.
Okay.
What I will say is, I think we're going to see some consolidation. I think we were already seeing it, and I think we're going to see consolidation, especially as the pandemic kind of hits with some of the groups. Because, for example, in the behavioral health field, a lot of the people that were court ordered or whatnot, the courts have shut down. So if your business isn't really sound, you might not be able to reopen. And then if you can't reopen, all that business gets repurposed to whoever can survive it.
Right.
So I guess across the board, and I think this is with any industry, if you work for a company that has figured out a way to weather these tough times, you'll see that a lot of market share shifts to those groups. So as you're looking for a company, and if you're thinking about longevity, look at it in that aspect.
Yeah.
So I'll add that. I know it's not really answering the question, but I think
that's helpful.
a piece of thing to think about.
No, that's great insight. And then there's a second part to that question. Should aspiring students in the field focus on any particular technology acquisition, even given the wide array of career possibilities?
It's specific to healthcare?
Yes, for this particular point, but I think we can broaden it.
I think so. I think mastering anything that's more of a digital or cloud-based technology is going to be helpful. The healthcare field is very slow to change, so they have a lot of archaic, antiquated stuff. But I think people that can come in and figure out how to make that change and make it an easy transition so that those groups can move faster, I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think we're going to see more of that shift because the whole world is switching to this new age, right, of more of a digital, virtual world where it's not as easy to get right in front of someone. So
right. It's almost like we saw it right now with Zoom, like there's plenty of platforms out there, right? But then everybody just navigated to Zoom, and it just blew up the company. And little interesting fact, the owner or the founder of Zoom actually used to work for WebEx. And so he never encountered a happy customer. So that's why he created Zoom and tried to make it as easy as possible. So to your point, if you have a good product out there, people navigate towards you. Janelle, what are your...
I just wanted to build off again of what Ken was saying as it relates to digital transformation right now. So that is the business that Cognizant is in. So we're an IT professional services firm serving multiple industries, not only healthcare, but also insurance and retail. And so just looking at the ways that we do need to upskill all of the talent in the workforce to have digital literacy skills. I think that is something, no matter what your degree, whether it's liberal arts or whatever, we need all to possess the language, the linguistics, even if we're not the ones who are actually inputting the coding, but to be able to have conversations around what is data and what does digital mean, because these industries, legacy industries, as Ken was saying, with healthcare and things that are heavily regulated, are being disrupted, and it's happening so quickly. And so how can you position yourself? And one way that you can do that, because you're affiliated with ASU now, is to get yourself those credentials and give yourself that credibility as you're coming into the workforce. Because I think the last thing we want to be is dinosaurs, right, and become extinct. And so I feel that this is the next skill set that's imperative for us to learn. And I'm including myself in that.
Yeah, I think we all are. Thank you, Janelle. Shainil, next question is for you. How has being an international student affect you in application for jobs or internships? Has it been an advantage or a disadvantage?
That's a tough one. It's a different process, I would say. It depends on what's your background and where you're applying. Now, if I'm a design engineer and I'm applying for a data science job, then of course I would have a hard time. So it's important to know the job requirements. They would have a minimum qualifications, which they would state, every job would state that. So if you think you align most of them, and they're also preferred qualifications. So you have to gauge through that do you think this is something which you want to do? I know for sometimes internships, people tend to try different things, and which is completely fine. You can try different job roles. So I think that's up to you, but it's not a disadvantage. It's internships is more of learning. You need to learn how much you can. You need to learn the culture, the work culture, and about your field as well. Interns are not expected to know everything. So you can just go there and learn and see what interests you more. Sometimes people think that if you are going as an intern, you should know everything. That's not the case. You just have to know basic skills, and then you would be fine. So it's not a disadvantage. I did have to apply a lot, but it's because of not able to network the same way. I am not a good person who was good at networking in the beginning. I didn't know how to talk to people, so I was kind of behind LinkedIn also. So LinkedIn is something which is a very powerful tool if you really want to know about the company as well.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing that. You're right. And the other thing I want to share too, and I just want to highlight, I know that you said before, is the access that students have to CPT and OPT friendly employers. So now with Handshake, we do have that option. So you're able to click on when you're searching, put that in as a filter, and it'll list all of the companies that are CPT and OPT friendly. So that's just a recommendation there. And then also on the International Students and Scholars site, we also have an RSS feed there where all the jobs that are coming from CPT and OPT employers are being surfaced there. So I think when Janell was here, that was a goal of ours, but we finally got it done.
No, to hear you say that, I was so excited. So that's great to hear. Yes, very excited to hear that.
Yeah, and there's a ton of companies. People don't realize there is a ton of companies that are CPT and OPT friendly. So don't be discouraged. It is definitely not a disadvantage. It's a great opportunity to just showcase your skill and expertise to employers. Cool. All right, Janell, this next one's for you. Given the current climate in global travel, do you see companies continuing to offer internships abroad? Coming from an education background, do you feel that these internships are a necessary liability, for lack of a better term?
Okay, I'll start from the first part of the question and just answer it very broadly. And so I think companies right now are being very mindful of any liability that could come with, potential travel as a risk with COVID-19. So I think they, again, very high level, are going to err on the side of caution and making conservative decisions as it relates to maybe having employees intentionally travel. So I think that's something just to be aware of. Don't have any specifics to share, but that's just the impression I'm receiving. And so the second part of the question, internships, and let's see,
coming from
are they needed?
So I'll repeat it. Coming from an education background, do you feel that these internships are a necessary liability, for lack of a better term?
Got it. I would think that you're going to have an internship experience. It's going to add value. I think location, especially given the current environment, is of less importance than actual professional experiences that you're gaining. So I think being, again, mindful of how can I obtain an opportunity, cultivate an opportunity, maybe even create an opportunity that's going to allow me to showcase my skill set, add value, whether that's to an employer or to a customer. And so thinking of it in that way and not being, again, maybe focused on where that's geographically occurring, again, because we are in such a unique situation. And that's not to say that maybe employers in other countries, right, abroad, they may offer those opportunities, but, are they coming to hire somebody from the United States, for example, for an internship in France, as an example? I don't know. Like, you have to give consideration as to why they would make that decision, given the current liability involved in that.
Yeah, good call. And then the other thing that we're seeing is that a lot of companies now are converting their internships to virtual internships, which
Correct.
helps that in such a big way. eliminate that as a factor.
And I can speak to that too, Sheila. That's something that Cognizant did this summer. We had to take our internships fully virtual because of this environment. And so we'll continue to do that as we onboard our full-time class this year too.
Awesome. Great insight. Ken, Shainil, do you have anything to add to that conversation regarding internships and the remoteness?
I just want to add one last piece, like where I did my internship, like sometimes don't get discouraged if they say they don't sponsor you. For your CPT, you don't need any sponsorship because that's something which your visa already has. So my company where I did my internship, they didn't know about CPT, OPT. So you might want to just take some time to explain what exactly CPT is and what are its implications, because the employer might not know that coming from a different background. So don't get discouraged if they say they don't sponsor. You can always ask them more questions like, maybe don't need a sponsorship for a CPT. So what else do you need from me? Do you need my background, my resume, something? So always just some last piece that ask them more questions about that.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, let's see here. Here's a question. Who are internships appropriate for in terms of stage of life? If an older person is changing careers, doing a master's degree.
I can take it because I was that person. So I had already obtained my master's in higher education, was a working professional when I decided to go back to work full time. My program at WPK for the MBA program did require an internship. So that's one consideration. Are you looking to do the internship as a part of an academic requirement, or are you seeking it for the experience to develop yourself professionally? And so I think that's where speaking with a coach can come in handy, but definitely as someone who was a career changer. So again, having the background in higher education, getting an internship with Medtronic, the medical device company, to look at their strategic workforce plan. They had a high number of folks who are going to be retiring in the next 5 years, and they needed to come up with a plan on how to get that filled. And so that was my responsibility to come up with part of that plan. And so I think internships are completely necessary to give you some experience, and then also those things that you can put on your resume to showcase, yes, I have done that. And you'll have to give consideration to your personal circumstances. Can you take on an unpaid internship? Do you need this to be paid? And so there are a lot of factors that will go into that. And so if you have, through ASU's Career Services, the ability to speak with a coach, I think that's always helpful.
Great advice. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that insight. Ken,
I'd add to that too.
Oh, sure.
I'm learning here in the behavioral health world, people have to get a certain amount of hours. And so it doesn't really matter what age or where they're coming from. It's just about getting that time. So if they have I think what gets tougher as people get, I guess, more seasoned or older is your ability to maybe do an internship without getting paid. I think that's where more difficulty comes into play. But that's just my little 2 cents.
Yeah, good points. Good points. Shainil, anything you want to share as far as benefits you've gained from the internship?
Yeah, you got to, like, I personally learned many different aspects of the company, right from engineering to R&D to actually the people who operate, the operators. I got to talk to them and know how they do their work, to talk to HR, to talk to the different management people. So I think that's something which was very helpful for me to learn. I had like one question for both the panelists also, like, we mentioned about LinkedIn. So for example, if you look into somebody's profile based on their application, what are some of the things you look in their LinkedIn profile? And what would you expect because they would already see that you have seen your profile. So what would be your expectation from them in that case?
Good question. Janell or Ken, do you want to take? Okay.
I think looking for congruencies in the sense of how is this person representing, themselves both. I would say if I'm looking at their LinkedIn profile, I would imagine I would schedule a call if they've, reached out to network in that way. And so just making sure that, kind of finding that match, right? Like between what's represented, it's verified, like as we're speaking on the call. And so I think that gets back at knowing how you are representing yourself. And so having that awareness is always going to be helpful. So that's one thing I think from a recruiter standpoint, is that something I would be looking for.
Good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. I think it cut out right when you were saying it.
Oh, sure.
Basically,
do you mind repeating yourself?
Yeah, basically when you would see someone's job application resume, and if you were to see their LinkedIn profile, what will be some of the things you would be seeing when you see their profile on LinkedIn? And they would also come to know that you have seen their profile. So do you expect that they message you back or something from that?
So yes, a few things with that. So I agree with you, Janelle, on the congruency piece. There's been places where I'm like, hey, this doesn't match, and it doesn't feel right, and then we might pass on that person. Also, from time to time, I will, let's say if I'm searching for someone, I may go look and peek at their profile and see if they look back, and if they do, then sometimes that shows a little bit of interest, and I might reach out to them about something. And I've had people that have looked at my profile, let's say if there's a position posted or who knows why that I might think might fit something we need, I will reach out to them and say, hey, I noticed you peeked at my profile. We actually have a position that could be the blah, 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 and reach out to them and try to start a conversation. I don't know that everybody does that, but it's definitely something that I do.
Mm-hmm. That's good. It's good to shed light on that, because I think we all have that, like where people are looking at your profile, you're like, why are they looking, or what's going on? But you're right. Why not reach out and just start the conversation?
And
right.
Sometimes, Sheila, I'll add too, if I've noticed that someone has, looked, but not maybe sent a message, I will message them. And so just, like there's no need for mystery here. So, just take this forward. And so again, yeah, just seeing it in that way and starting this process early, as Ken was saying, because, you don't want to seem insincere, right? Like the whole purpose of this process is to be as real as possible to find your best fit. The companies want to hire the best talent that's going to be the fit with the organization. You want that as, the candidate. And so how do we both get there, right? And it's through transparency, and I think setting realistic expectations in the sense that maybe we only have so many openings, right now. And one of my biggest messages to everyone is that a no today is not a no forever. And like the best way to sustain yourself as a candidate for the long haul is to be gracious when receiving bad news. Sometimes know that when you ask for feedback, we can't provide that directly maybe to you, again, liability, but maybe we'll give that to your career coaches, for example. So there are ways for you to get the information that you need to improve yourself as a candidate. Just know that it might not come directly from the recruiter.
Yeah, great advice, great insight. Thank you. And thanks, Shainil, for asking that question. There was a question here I wanted to make sure we get to, and I know it's like about 10 minutes away from our closing up time, but thanks again for everyone's patience and just interaction on the chat and everything, so thank you. Does the additional documents section in job applications matter? As someone who is on the other end, what is your experience and advice? Also, if they're not able to satisfy all of the requirements, how do they carefully sell themselves without having a negative impression?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'll say, and I'll say this about cover letters too, is I think it's important to send a cover letter with your resume, but most recruiters spend about 6 seconds looking at a resume We're just checking to make sure certain things match, and then it goes into the pile of I'm going to review it again or I'm going to call them and learn more. If I'm on the fence, and I would say a lot of people that I network with will say the same thing, I will take a look at the cover letter to see if there's something in there that's maybe more compelling, or maybe something that I'm missing. Like, let's say they apply here in Arizona, but they live in Missouri. And there may be something written in the cover letter. That might be something that changes things for me there. Additional documents, I believe, are important if it's something that is going to actually help the job. So for example, if you're a graphic designer, and I would actually hope that you have a link to your stuff, but it may make sense to add additional documents that way, or if there's additional documents actually requested in the job description. Otherwise, it's just extra stuff, but that's my take, and that's for what I've recruited for.
I'll tell a little bit more too. Yeah, because Ken, I found the same thing as it relates to cover letters. I find it does add more value, at least in my hiring experience, because you get to know, again, it's the chance to have the story beyond the bullet points, right? And so I do find it very helpful. I know it's onerous from the way that you're composing these, because they need to be tailored and specific and reference conversations that you've had at career fairs. But this is the investment that you're making for the position that you want. And so knowing it is going to take time. And so how do you make these decisions for yourself on prioritizing, okay, these are my top companies. These are the ones where I will, have it all very, very specific. Maybe for your second tier, they can be a little bit more generic so you can push them out the door faster. You're going to have to come up with your system with your timeframes. But just know from a recruiter standpoint, it is valued because I can gather so much more. And the same for LinkedIn. That's your opportunity to post things that you would put in a portfolio. So if you've made videos, if you've made content, this is where you can show and not just tell. And so I really want you all to think about, how are you presenting yourselves out there as the recruiters are looking at a sea of candidates, right? How are you going to position yourself to stand out?
Great advice. Great advice. Shainil, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think I got the advice pretty good.
Awesome. Thanks. And we've got time for one more question here. As recruiters, do you expect that the applicant asks for company benefits? If yes, is this negotiable?
I just like to add really quick. So Sheila, I call her Tatty, by the way. So Tatty was the one who helped me, as I had the same question when I was evaluating the benefits and I had no clue. And she was the one who helped me go one by one to what everything means. It could be a big challenge because if you're not from this country, you might not know what 401k means. What is a flexible account spending? You might not have heard about it ever. So getting a career mentor would be really helpful in that case to help you evaluate that. You might get a little bit of idea if you look at it, but still it's always good to have expert advice. They might tell you good tips, how you can save more money, avoid some taxes. So I found it really helpful. Tatty helped me really for that, and I so appreciate that she did it for me. So I would recommend everyone to find someone who could help with that.
Oh, it was a pleasure, Shainil. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
And Shainil, I'll say too, though, it's not just international students who don't understand benefits. So as an HR professional, it is still a foreign language that has to be studied, and it is constantly changing. So yes, I always ask for definitions, and yeah, that's a great point.
And I would say, ask the recruiter that. Just be tasteful about it. Don't ask that at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. Obviously, ask about the role and a few other benefits that comes with talent development and all that kind of stuff. But benefits are important because it's part of the compensation package. And to understand that, let you know and make sure it fits what you need to, because at the end of the day, the role has to fit your lifestyle at the same time as you are able to work for the company.
Yeah, and to what Ken is saying, just being aware of the timing, right? There's a proper time to talk about benefits. And so very high level, you can ask that early on, completely, acceptable protocol. But when you want to get into like the specifics on things, that would come after the job offer has been extended. And so again, high level awareness early on, of course, you want to know these things, what's available, but then to the point, and then like about the negotiation, and then having understanding that maybe some things are non-negotiable within the package, but it's always okay to ask. And I would highly encourage you to ask what maybe there is flex on as it relates to benefits, because you may get a better compensation for you by doing it that way.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be your own advocate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just don't completely change in the end, because that upsets recruiters. You and I. That's just a personal pet. Wait, what? You asking for another $100,000?
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you guys enough. I think I speak for everyone on the call today. Just thank you so much for your expertise and sharing your advice and all the questions that were populated during the chat too. Thanks for everyone's participation. It's amazing how fast 90 minutes goes. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brianne. Brianne, I think you're on mute.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks again to all of our panelists. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you to the participants for the really engaged questions. This has just been such a great conversation. I've been sitting over here smiling the whole time, even though my camera was off. So thanks everyone for joining us. Just want to encourage, everyone on this call, please do reach out to our office, Career and Professional Development Services, if there's anything that we can do to help you take that next step. So whether that is developing a better networking strategy. We heard a lot from our panelists today about the importance of networking. Or maybe you want to get your resume, your application materials reviewed. Please do reach out to our office. We're here to help you with whatever that next step is for you. All right, well, thanks so much everyone again for joining. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thanks everyone. Connect with us on LinkedIn.
Bye.